So the objective that we're looking at is how do we go in and two things. How do we equip you with some of the skills and understanding of how to help on an improvement project, and also there's a little bit of trying to change how we look at the things that we do and use some of this information to help identify opportunities. Identifying those opportunities will then turn into executing those opportunities and trying to make your jobs a little easier, try to create some stability. How do we get out of constant firefighting mode and into a regular work flow type of mode? How many firefighters do we have in the room? Everybody raise your hands. I know you're all firefighters. The bad part is what I run into, especially still in aviation. I talked to two of the guys who's got their pictures on the wall, the wall of fame. All right, two of the guys, were chatting with them Friday afternoon, and they were talking about, I can't believe I spent the whole week, fighting fires, right? And they use those, that's the terms that they used, and so, which turned into a great teaching moment, for me, to help them reinforce, what are those things that keep happening that you don't expect to happen, right? They're going off and the alarm goes off and they try to put the hose on full on wherever the fire is. And so how do we fix that? Especially in the information flow. So, any questions before we start? Earlier when I talked about opportunities, it's not just the opportunities that's in your the program office that you work in, but also if you see things that are in the millennium flow, the information flow, right? Those things need to be identified, targeted, and executed also. But a lot of these tools and concepts are easy to apply because we are actually creating something. Yes, it's a piece of paper or a stack of papers, but it's in the information flow. So feedback is really important. So we're going to touch the historical evolution just a little. I mean, I've got one slide, hopefully it's one slide that talks about that. We'll talk about the transformation model, and some of that's talking about how do we act in a team. Not necessarily how do we act like a team, but what are the things that are most helpful, and what are these phases that we'll go through. Lean Six Sigma is a structured approach to problem solving, and we go through phases, the DMAIC phases. And it's got some tools that can help us. You don't have to be a green belt or a black belt to use all the tools. There are some that they're the 7 basic tools that we can use when we're just in our flow, in the things that we create. We'll talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities, and we'll talk about objectives, which is project support and change agent. So we've got some quotes in here, and these quotes are to help kind of form a foundation of how we think about this stuff, this new way of taking a look at what we do. So it's easier to act your way to new thinking than to think your way to new action. Doing the task and doing it better become one and the same. John Schuch is a guy from MIT, spent some time in the 80s at Toyota in Japan, and take a look at why is it that Toyota is taking over in America. It wasn't just the gas problems in the 70s, but it goes further back. So we make stuff. Everyone shook their head up and down every time I've said it. We make RFPs, statements of work. We do risk analysis. We do. How many of us make briefs to leadership? Briefs.
Oh yeah.
How many slides or how many pages are in your briefs?
About 120.
20 in the minute.
120.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pieces.
Yeah.
smashed together.
Yep.
Does that sound 120 slides? Does that sound very brief?
No,
Yeah.
believe me.
Wow.
Trust me. Trust me.
So this is the honest part. That is the biggest number I've ever heard for a brief that goes to leadership. 120 slides.
Every month.
That's their monthly what,
Engineering
organization.
Board review.
We are working on it. We're trying to cut it down.
Yeah.
Believe me.
I've got some help for that. Okay.
Great.
So Lean and Six Sigma. Six Sigma's talking about reduction of process variation. It's got, you can see the two little histograms here. The red lines are talking about, what is important to the customer, kind of their specs, what's acceptable to them, what's not acceptable. See how one's tighter than the other. Lean is talking about reduction of waste, and we're going to be talking about the 8 wastes. And ultimately, these two toolboxes, the effect is to improve flow, right? Because the ultimate customer has some expectations, and so the intent is how do we create this documentation, these things that meets their needs, provides what they're looking for. So here in Lean Six Sigma, we have some different roles and responsibilities. Deployment director. This is someone who works with leadership to try to instill some of the ways of thinking and some of the tools to leadership. Master Black Belt. That's someone who works across enterprises, whether it's with inside a program office or with the contracting command or with units in the field or with suppliers. And think of it as it's just a big toolbox. This would be Master Black Belt pushes around a couple of shiny red snap-on toolboxes, right? So project sponsor is someone who works with the team, leadership for the team. They're usually a process owner. Or they're someone who owns the cost account, and it's really the product that's going through. They're usually the person who's responsible for that. And they own a lot of the resources that does that work, and so we try to use them to help set vision and direction for a project. One of the things that we found, and it's pretty easy to find, and we can see project failures that have happened, is because this project really didn't matter to the project sponsor, whether it got executed or not. And so the project failed and ultimately still couldn't seem to get our hands wrapped around on what the problem was. So they help with, if it's an opportunity that's not important to them, it's not going to happen. Black Belt, someone who works with a team, works across the organization. Green Belt is someone who has a fairly small scope. Their toolbox is about this big. They work like within a work team or work within an IPT to help execute some opportunities. It's a lot smaller scale. It's usually less people. It's usually an easier process or project. And then yellow belts, these are people who are subject matter experts that work on a team. We'll go through and we'll put together a charter with the sponsor and with a good problem statement, a well-defined problem statement that everybody understands and everybody probably feels the pain. And we'll go through with some subject matter experts because they're the people who are in the field, in the trenches, in that part of the process, dealing with the constant problems and firefighting and headaches that happens all the time. So how do we go through and eliminate some of the firefighting, eliminate some of the headaches? So a lot of this we take a look at what is value, and it's some of those, what is that thing that's important to the customer. So, so it could be ultimately the soldier in the field. It could be the person sitting at the desk right next to you. You do your thing and you hand that off to them, and they add their value, and it goes on down the flow until it turns into whatever the final product is. And it's determined by the customer as what they're willing to pay for. Now keep in mind, when you guys write a statement of work and you send that off to whoever your contract specialist is, they don't whip out their checkbook and write a check for, thank you for that statement of work, right? And they hand you a check for whatever amount. But there are some things that matter to them. The three usual suspects are complete, correct, and on time. And if we can meet all three of those, usually these things just sail on through. But what does correct mean? What is complete? Sometimes we don't even know what on time is either. So we get to go have a conversation with our friends in the on down the value stream. So value is delivering the exact product or service that's being required in the right amount, at the right time, with no defects. So it's how do we deliver perfection? Now granted, you will not walk back into your offices on Monday and be able to deliver perfection. A lot of this is a journey. You know, it's not some kind of end state that we finally reach, yay, we're lean, right? That's not really what it is. It's taking a look at how do we respond to abnormalities. How do we put into our system, how do we deal with things that come back? So who's the customer? Soldier, right? They want their product to work every time that they need it. They want it to be available every time they need it. Taxpayer wants a product to be cost effective, and also your teammate, that person that's next in the flow. We hand off information back and forth to each other, then it'll go over the wall to the contracting center, and it'll go to whoever the technical lead is, or logistics teammates. So these, what is it that they're looking for, and what is that value that we add?